Hey there, 7th graders. This video is meant to help you out with the What Are Viruses packet. Hopefully you had a chance to get started with this last week, but if you didn't, this hopefully will help you out if you're stuck on something. So these worksheets or these packets, they go right along with the textbook. They go right in order, and you're just filling in a lot of graphic organizers or charts as you're reading this, and just helps you to sort of sort the information a little bit instead of just doing it all right in that lesson outline format. So the first one we're starting out with is define viruses. And on these, we'll try and fill in the page numbers as you go. And we're starting off on page 246 in the textbook. I'm going to slide this over a little bit so we can see the textbook on the left-hand side here as a reference. So first off, we're looking for the definition of the word virus. And so our textbook does a good job of highlighting the vocabulary words for you. And so right here on page 247, the word virus is highlighted for you. It says it's a strand of DNA or RNA surrounded by a layer of protein that can infect and replicate in a host cell. And that's going to be your definition for a virus. So you just need to write that in on the worksheet packet here where it says define virus, and you're ready to move on to the next one. In the next section, it says characterize viruses by completing the table. So you can see we've got 3 different sections here. And in those sections, the first one says identify 5 illnesses caused by viruses. So identify means the same thing as list. So you want to list some viruses, illnesses caused by viruses. If you look back onto page 247 here in the book, right before the definition of the word virus, they give you sort of a list of different illnesses that are caused by viruses. Chickenpox, mumps, measles, and polio. Sound familiar? You might have received shots to prevent you from getting these. Anyways, I don't need to read that to you. But they also mention influenza. It tells you all of these are caused by viruses. And so you're going to list those illnesses right here on your worksheet in this 1 through 5 section. Next, it says to identify 4 shapes of viruses. So we're listing 4 different shapes that viruses come in. If you look at these pictures here, it's going to give you those 4 shapes. We've got cylinder, crystal, sphere, and bacteriophage. Bacteriophage, they're kind of crazy looking, look like a little robot. And so those are your 4 shapes for viruses that you need to list in this part of the chart. Next, it says identify 4 ways viruses contrast with bacteria. Contrast, remember, means different. So what are 4 ways that viruses are different from bacteria? They talk about those in this second paragraph on page 247. So it tells you they don't have a cell wall, they don't have a nucleus. Bacteria don't have a nucleus either, so don't write that down. They don't have other organelles, though, present in cells, so write that down. It also tells you that they're smaller. And we've got those different shapes. So no cell wall, no organelles, they're smaller, and different shapes are going to be the 4 ways that they're different from bacteria. Next, we've got a little concept map here for you to write down characteristics of living things that viruses lack. So we are looking for things that viruses can't do, but other living things can. So if you go to the next page in the textbook, page 248, this first heading is dead or alive. And you can see this here, blue heading, top of the page, first paragraph. In this paragraph, they tell you things that viruses cannot do that living things can. And so those are going to be your answers. You're just going to write those into these circles on the worksheet. Next part of the worksheet is a flow chart that talks about how viruses replicate. So this flow chart very closely follows the flow chart that is by my head here. So I'm going to pop my head out of here. And it is a different looking flow chart, but it is showing you the same thing. So it starts with viral blank enters blank. Well, if you look at step 1 here, it says the virus attaches to a host cell and inserts its genetic material. In the picture, it tells you you've got the virus DNA. And so you've got the word viral here, you can put DNA, enters, and then in the second blank, you're going to write host cell. Then you notice that we're kind of splitting here. You've got two arrows coming off of this second box. And that follows step 2 here on the textbook flowchart, where the virus either becomes active, goes down, if you follow this arrow, or if you continue straight across, it becomes latent or hidden. And so you're going to follow that to get these other sets of steps. And so this flowchart, though it looks different because it's boxes instead of circles, doesn't have the colors, it does follow this flowchart from the textbooks. So try and use that to fill in the boxes and the blanks on the worksheet packet. There is a description of replication in the textbook up here by this blue heading that says replication on page 249. You can take a look at that also. But I think the flowchart is going to be more helpful to you there. Next, it says explain viral mutation. Mutations is one of the headings here, one of the blue headings. So you're going to want to look in that paragraph to find an explanation of a viral mutation, or just, kind of saying what it is. And so it tells you here in this first sentence, as viruses replicate, their DNA or RNA frequently mutates or changes. These mutations enable viruses to adjust to changes in their host cells. So this is going to be part of our answer there, okay? You could say that viral mutations are when the DNA or RNA changes when it's being copied, and this lets them to adapt to changes the host cells are going to be making. Next, we've got a cause and effect diagram. So the cause, they've got viruses attack and destroy specific host cells, and we are looking for the effect that happens as a result of that. This is going to be on the next page in the textbook, so you're going to page 250. And in this first paragraph, as you read through it, it talks about different things that viruses infect. But as you get down towards the end here, the last couple sentences is where you're going to find that answer. It says, most viruses attack and destroy specific cells. And that is very similar to the cause they've given us on the worksheet. So you're looking for an effect that happens as a result of that. And it's right in this next sentence. This destruction of cells causes the symptoms of the disease. So our effect would be symptoms of the disease up here. Now we're moving on to our third and final page that you need to do on the virus packet. It says identify 2 ways to prevent the spread of viral diseases. Well, we've got this big red heading on page 251, treating and preventing viral diseases. So I would start by looking there. We're looking for 2 ways to prevent the spread of viral diseases. As you're reading, you're going to be looking for the word prevent. Antiviral medicines can be used to treat and prevent infection. That doesn't really talk about the spread, though. But as you get down to the second paragraph, I see the word spread right in this first sentence. So health officials use many methods to prevent the spread of viral diseases. And it's going to tell you those 2 different ways in this paragraph, right where my mouse pointer is pointing. Okay, so take a look there to get your 2 ways to prevent the spread of viral diseases. The next section says organize information about antibodies. So starting off in this first box, it says definition. So we need a definition for the word antibody or antibodies. And looking in the textbook right here, I see the word antibody is highlighted. It says an antibody is a protein that can attach to a pathogen and make it useless. So you're going to want to copy that down here or write it in there. Next, we're looking for 2 types of immunity. The word immunity is written in green here to highlight it. We're talking about the word origin, and it comes from Latin, meaning exempt or free. So there's 2 different types of immunity. If you look right before that green highlighted word, it says this is an example of acquired immunity. And that's going to be one of your types, acquired. The other type It's going to be later in this paragraph. So you're looking for another type of immunity. And that's the words that it says right here in this last sentence, another type of immunity called natural immunity. Develops when a mother passes antibodies on to her unborn baby. So that's going to be your second type, natural immunity. Then over here, we're looking at what antibodies do. Antibodies, they are going to be doing what? So antibodies do a couple of different things. They bind to viruses and other pathogens and prevent them from attacking a host cell. That's one. And it also targets viruses and signals the body to destroy them. So we're looking in the same paragraph, right, where you were reading about immunity, to find two things that antibodies do. In our next part, it says, explain how a vaccine works. So we're looking for vaccines. Vaccines are actually onto the next page. So you're going to want to turn over to page 252. And we've got the definition of vaccine. It's a mixture containing material from one or more deactivated pathogens. A pathogen is something that causes a disease. And here it gives you an explanation. When an organism is given a vaccine for a viral disease, the vaccine triggers the production of antibodies. And that's going to be how it works. The vaccine triggers the production of antibodies. That's what you need to write down. So it basically is kind of like tricking your body into thinking you've got the virus, and telling it how it can treat it. Okay, so it makes your body produce antibodies for the virus because it's giving you a deactivated form of that virus. So when you get a vaccine, a lot of times they are giving you either some dead or some another form of the virus that's not harmful, but your body senses that and it creates the antibodies to fight the virus in the future if it were to actually infect you. Then the next one, we are looking for 2 reasons scientists conduct research with viruses. And so this last heading talks about research with viruses right there in red. And so you're going to be looking in these 2 paragraphs for reasons that scientists would do research with viruses. Then lastly, we have a question that says, summarize it. Explain how a person can be infected with many viruses but might not appear sick. So to find the answer for this question, or to help you make an explanation for this, I want you to look for information about latent viruses. Latent are also called hidden viruses. And so these would be viruses that someone could have but not realize it. And it's because they're not showing any symptoms. And sometimes COVID-19 is an example of a virus that sometimes isn't necessarily latent, but the symptoms aren't as obvious for some people. So latent viruses are talked about first on page 248 and 249 in this flowchart. So it says become latent. So please take a look again at this flowchart. And also up in the replication part here where they talk about latent viruses. And then the other place to look to help you put together an answer for this is on page 250 in this second column. It talks about viruses not causing symptoms right away. And I mentioned the word latent viruses. So take a look at these paragraphs here where my mouse is hovering, okay, on page 250, and use what you read there to help you explain how someone can be infected with viruses but might not seem to be sick. If you missed it in the instructions, you do not have to do the final page if you are taking this out of Schoology and working on it in Notability. If you got a paper copy from me last week, this page is already removed, so you don't need to worry about it. Hopefully this was helpful, and you have a great day learning about viruses. Take care.